Hello friends, welcome. Friends, everybody must be aware that the government of India recently made an announcement of proposing a unified pension scheme. So the proposal is that whoever has subscribed to NPS, they will have an option to choose between NPS and UPS. The details of UPS will be announced subsequently. Now, friends, you must be aware that earlier the government employees were under the OPS, the old pension scheme, where pension was given based on certain contribution by the government, where the employee doesn't have to make any contribution. So there was no contribution made on behalf of the employee, and at the end of the service period, a pension was calculated on the basis of which pension was given. Now, why I am doing this video today? The reason I'm doing this video is to give you a perspective of what is our pension outflow compared to our GDP in absolute terms, and how it stands on other top revenue items from the point of view of Government of India's accounts. So friends, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a tool which I had created recently, which gives you a overview of how to visualize the Government of India's account based on certain controls which the tools gives you directly on its UI. So friends, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through one by one in each of the financial year. Now the latest budget was announced just a couple of months back, in which if you look at this 31st March 2025 budgetary estimate, because why I have done 31st March 2025, because I will be doing a year end analysis for all the previous financial year. So that's why 31st March 2025. So if you look at the top revenue items, there are 12 items for revenue items. From an expenditure point of view, I have taken into consideration in this chart. So you see, interest payments, defense services revenue means there must be some revenue expenditure on defense, right, on top of pension, because you have to pay salaries, etc. So this is defense services revenue. Then food and public distribution revenue, because the Government of India pays subsidies, and there are a lot of other things, MSP subsidies, etc. A lot of things are there. So, and also the Government of India is giving free grains to a certain section of the population under the PM scheme. So that also is covered here. Rural development is covered here. Fertilizer subsidy is covered here. Then there is transferred to state on revenue account. And then there is a category revenue under the Ministry of Revenue budget. And then defense pension, police revenue, there also salaries, etc. are there. Agriculture and farm welfare revenue, and health and family welfare revenue. And then finally the pension, the central government pension, is the last item here. So we have how many items? 12 items, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through back in time, and then slowly progress forward in time to see you, to make you visible how these line items are changing over a period of time, and which is the most important line item which we should be concerned about. You will be able to clearly see in this, which has maximum impact on the Government of India's account. So let's go back in time. So how do I go back in time? So I'll just pull this, let me just take my pen out. So I'll just pull this bar, and we'll start at 0. What is 0? The 0 is the financial year FY 18-19. So if you see FY 18-19 year, which is the 31st March 2018. Now all these numbers that you see here, there are two bars here, bar number 1 on top and bar number 2 in below, against one single item. So what is bar number 1? The bar number 1 on top, which is the top bar, is the actual spend. And then the bottom bar, which is slightly darker color compared to the top bar, is the budgetary estimate. That's how you have to read this chart. So if you look at here, you will find that in FY 18-19, interest payment was 5.88 lakh crores from the point of a budgetary estimate, and the actual spend was 5.83 lakh crores. And it was, what was the actual spend? Actual spend was 3.09% of the GDP. Whereas if you see pension, so there are pension is from two accounts. One is defense pension, another is pension on terms of the central government employees, which is again which is the last item. So you will see here the defense pension actual spend was 1.02 lakh crores, whereas the central government employees pension was roughly around 45,000 crores, right? So which is the actual spend. So if you add this two together and you calculate the percentage of GDP, so if you here it was 0.54% of the GDP and it was 0.24% of the GDP. So if you do a calculation which is 0.54 plus 0.24, so it came out to be roughly around, just a minute, let me just take this out away. Just a minute. Yeah, I'll put it here, that will be better. So what was the number? Number was 0.78% of the GDP. So you can see it here, 0.78% of the GDP. So on March 31st, 2019, this is the number. So let's go one step forward and let's look at what is the situation. So look at this item. You can very clearly see that the most significant item is interest payment. So let's go next. So when I do next, you will see that the interest payment have increased, right? Because the earlier number was how much? Earlier number was 3.09. Now it has decreased by a certain basis point, a small amount, because the actual spend, which is now 3.04. Now, what about the pension? Now, pension, if you see here, the central government pension, it was 0.24, right? 0.24. So let's go to previous 0.24. Now it is 0.25. So it has increased slightly by a certain basis point, which is very small, right? And then as far as the defense pension is concerned, if you look at go one step backward, it has increased. So defense pension increased by from 0.54 to 0.59% of the GDP. So this is the situation. Now the most important, so interest payment did increase, but from a revenue, from a percentage GDP point of view, there was no increase. So let's go do the next financial year. So now next financial year, which is the financial year FY 2021, if you see here, the interest payment is now 3.44%. So let's go previous, what was it? So there has been a significant increase from a percentage of GDP point of view on account of interest payment. From the earlier number was what? Earlier number was 3.04%. Now it has become how much? 3.44%. Now let's look at from a percentage GDP point of view of defense pension as well as the central government pension. What happened to that? So if you look at it, there has been an increase from 0.59% in case of defense pension, because if you look at the earlier financial year, which is FY20, the number was how much? 0.59%. Now it has increased to 0.65%, whereas the revenue pension also increased to 0.32%. And why did it happen? It happened because of a lower base. The COVID year, it was a COVID year, the GDP number decreased and therefore the pension numbers also decrease accordingly, right? As well as the percentage numbers decreased, the percentage value numbers on the percentage of GDP decreased. So let's do next. Now if you do next, now there has been a decrease now. If you look at the interest payment number fell back to 3.41% and the pension numbers also has decreased. So if you look at the defense pension, it is 3.17%. And which is around percentage from a percentage point of view, the GDP is 0.5%, and the central government employees pension is now 0.28%. Now if I do next, again there has been a decrease, but this number is increasing. So let's do previous, and if you see here, there has been an increase. So interest payment is a major concern than pension. So if you look at this, and let me just do again next. So we will come out to be 31st March 2024. You see that the interest payment is now 3.6% of the GDP. Whereas the pension numbers have decreased. Now it is how much? 0.25% of the GDP. Earlier it was how much? It remained the same. Whereas the defense pension number, let's look at defense pension number. If I do next, the defense pension number has decreased to 0.48% compared to the earlier fiscal year, which is 31st March 2023. So there has been, now there is a steady decrease in defense pension, which is very significant, whereas the central government employees pension is now remaining static within number of 0.2524% of the GDP, whereas the interest payment has been increasing significantly. You see, interest payment as a percent of GDP is increasing significantly. Now, if I do next, which is 31st March 2025, here I do not have the actual number, so I have to rely with the budgetary estimate number. You can see that the interest payment is now 3.53% of the GDP, whereas the pension, the central government pension number has gone down to 0.24% of the GDP, whereas the defense pension is now at 0.443% of the GDP. So if I just take you through a chart which I just recently published on LinkedIn, so I'm going to take you through the LinkedIn post. So here you will basically get a snapshot. Rather than going to the LinkedIn post, let me just take out the picture, right? I'll just take out the picture. And if you look at this chart, just let me give you this chart. Hold on for a minute. So if you look at this chart, which I had posted in LinkedIn, so you will find that this chart is going to give you a trend, right, of the pension of the central government employees as well as of the defense pension in both absolute terms as well as in terms of the percent of GDP. This is going to give you a fantastic picture. You'll see that in absolute terms, the number increased till FY23 and then it stabilized. The pension numbers of both defense as well as the central government employees pension has stabilized. And in percent of GDP term, there is now a decrease. You see, the total pension. See, if you look at defense pension, there is a drastic decrease in defense pension, whereas the pension of central government employees is now standing at what was in FY18 as a percent of GDP now. Now, what is going to happen with UPS? I have no clue. I can't say what is going to happen because I have not done the numbers. This is the number which the government has projected based on their current schemes, NPS schemes and other schemes. So it's very clear, the summary is very clear that the central government pension is now standing at the percent of GDP, which is FY18 at the same level, which is 0.24%, whereas the defense pension has decreased from 0.56% to 0.43%, and in absolute term, the numbers increased till FY21, then there was a slight decrease in FY22, and now these numbers actually have stabilized going forward. So this, friends, I thought of talking to you about. So the summary of this discussion is that the overall pension which the government of India is granting to their employees, both defense as well as central government employees, stands now at around 0.67% of the GDP. Now, if you go to this chart, which is the last chart, which is 31st March 2025, you can see the numbers and you can basically make out yourself that where pension stands compared to the government of India's other revenue expenditure. Because revenue expenditure is considered to be a wasteful expenditure in real terms because it does not generate cash flow in future. So when you look at revenue expenditure, you will find that the biggest concern is interest payment. It is a huge amount. It is now projected at 11.63 lakh crores, which is roughly equal to the amount of money the government of India has kept for capex. The government of India has kept for capex of 11.11 lakh crores. So what this tool does is that you can actually see the capital expenditure numbers also right in front of you. So if I basically choose from revenue to capital, you can basically see that how the capital numbers are there. So for the individual 12 items here. So you'll find that road and transport 2.72 lakh crores, railways 2.52 lakh crores, capital for defense services 1.72 lakh crores, transport to state 1.62 lakh crores. So mainly the capital expenditure is on account of road and highways and on account of railways, and the numbers in the percent of GDP is very less compared to the interest outflow. So if everybody is focused on pension, yes, pension is definitely a matter of concern because we have to mitigate pension because it is not a constructive expense and it is going to put a lot of stress on India's overall growth as well as GDP. So naturally it is a matter of concern, but the biggest concern is then on account of fiscal deficit. So if you look at one other dimension I am going to show you is the account summary, you will see that the fiscal deficit numbers here, where is the fiscal deficit here? Just a minute. Here, look at the fiscal deficit numbers. So this year fiscal deficit is 16.13 lakh crores. Now if I go to the previous year numbers, it was 17.36 35 lakh crores. Then we go to the previous year, the number is 17.55 lakh crores. Then the previous year, the number is 15.9 lakh crores. Then the previous year, the number is 18.49 lakh crores. Then the number drastically reduces. So, what this is telling us, after COVID, our overall account statement from the point of view of fiscal deficit actually has gone haywire. That's why the fiscal deficit as percent of GDP has moved up from, if you look at this number, actual number is 4.66% of the GDP, and now if I take you through the latest number, which the projected number, it is 4.9% of the GDP, which I don't know whether the government of India is going to meet, because the earlier numbers were higher, you see, 5.87% of the GDP, though actual number was 5.6% of GDP. So, in terms of outflow, right, is interest payment what we should be concerned about. We have to mitigate interest payment, and the government of India needs to reduce the policy rates because there is a lot of outflow of short-term interest which is directly linked with policy rates, but they can't because the inflation is very high. Reduction of policy rate will make the interest expected inflation, the inflation is very high. So if you reduce the interest rates, then what will happen? The expected inflation is going to go haywire, and then we will have a lot of problems in our economy. So you can understand where we are coming from. We are taking a lot of debt. Debt is the real problem, right? If you are not earning and you are taking a lot of debt, and that's why your interest payments are going haywire. So look at, again, let's go to the expenditure details, and if I do revenue, look at the interest payments. The interest payments are going completely, haywire. We are not able to control interest payment. That's where the focus is. So our debt to GDP number, the overall debt to GDP number, is the key criteria which we should be observing. All these things, all these account numbers are not very good indicator, because ultimately the overall debt that you carry is resulting in this interest payment outflow, and whatever you are earning, majority of your earnings. So if you look at, again, let me just go to the account statement which will give you an idea. See, the total expenditure is of the latest account, which is 31st March 2025, is 48.21 lakh crores, out of which the revenue received is 31.29 lakh crores. Now imagine 31.29 lakh crores is the revenue received, out of which if the 12 lakh crores is gone on interest payment, how much money you are going to be left with? You are paying interest on the revenue received, which is more than third. Means, let me just do the calculation right in front of 12 divided by 31.29, which is how much? 40%, roughly 38.5% of interest payment. That's the indicator which should be focused on, right, friends? So friends, I hope that you probably understood that where the problem is, we cannot be taking more debt. We have to curtail our debt so as to mitigate the long-term fiscal risk that our economy is going to face, because there could be situation where it may happen that our revenue receipts will go down because of external events which is beyond our control. There is war going on. If the petroleum prices go, our subsidies are going to go haywire. So in order for India to remain protected from risks which are global risk, external risks or macroeconomic risk which we may not be able to control, so we have to make our economy stronger by reducing debt. That's the key criteria going forward, which will stabilize our economy. And we cannot continuously keep long-term debts also, because long-term debts result in larger outflow, because as we go forward in time, it may be possible that our economy will become stronger, our interest rates are going to go lower. But if we commit a higher interest payments by taking long-term debt, which is at the tune of 7 to 8%, that outflow is going to be perpetual, which we cannot contain because we are taking those debts right now where our interest rates are very high. So anyway, friends, I'll stop here. I think you probably understood where we stand as far as our economy is concerned and our fiscal prudence is concerned, where we should be focusing on. This link of this particular tool I'm going to make available in the description, and you can play with these numbers yourself. It's all available in the public domain free. You can work this. Sometimes what happens is that this tool, it's put on sleep by Streamlit, because this is a free application hosted in a free server. So if you are continuously using this tool, it will be alive. But if it is dormant, then you have to just click on the link and it will come alive. It will take some time. Okay, friends, thank you for your time. I'll come back to you with a new video next time. Thank you very much.